And can I have a motion for minutes?
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. And then new and previous matters for consideration, our 2020 budget. Who would like to start?
Mr. Chair.
Ms. Grill.
We gave the presentation on October 21st, I believe, and the committee wanted some time to look over and have questions. We've been contacted by some committee members and other council members, so I think it's probably a good idea to open it up for questions and clarifications first.
Sure, sounds good to me. Any questions from the committee or alderpersons in the audience?
Mr. Chair,
Alderman May.
I'd like to start out with the position of municipal judge was shown as a 1.0 FTE. Looking at past budgets, it's always been a 0.75. What is the reason for making it 1.0?
I believe that was at the request of the judge.
And so my understanding is if you make it 1.0, that if a person wanted to run for the position and have a private practice, they would no longer be able to do so because it's a full FTE. Where's Kale? Is that right?
Under the ethics rules, a judge can only practice law if they are a part-time judge. So defining as a full-time judge would likely make that no longer part-time for the ethics code reasons.
Okay. So the answer was if it's a 1.0 FTE, he cannot have private practice. Okay. Now, that may not impact our current municipal judge, but should anyone in the future want to run for the position, we'd want to keep the position desirable enough where they could have a private practice. I don't think going to 1.0 FTE is the proper thing to do on that, and I'm curious to know what others on the committee think. I would think the highest we'd want to go is a 0.9 FTE, so that in the future, if someone did want to run for that position and still have their own private practice, they could do so. Is 0.9 considered part-time?
So the statute or the ethics code that talks about this just simply says no judge may have a private practice. There's an exception saying you can have it if you're part-time, which is undefined.
Okay.
So the best thing I can do is, as long as the city's not classifying it as full-time, then that would be the strongest argument that it's not full-time. So less than 1.0 full-time equivalent categorized and never described as full-time within the city's policies or code or anything like that. That seems to be a way to do it. And just clarify for the record, no matter what the judge would decide to do, it wouldn't impact the city necessarily as far as any code violations. That's a separate decision the judge has to make. This is just about creating a position that you believe is marketable and desirable for candidates for that position.
Yeah. I don't know if anyone else has an opinion on that. I don't understand why it went to 1.0 if it was been 0.75 this whole time.
And Alderman May, I think in general, I don't think we're going to be voting on any amendments or anything right now. I think we'll have discussion points at this point and put amendments forward more formally at a later date. I certainly am not prepared to vote on something that we just heard about just now. We need to discuss it further.
Yeah, and I wasn't hoping to make any amendments tonight either. I was just curious to know why it changed. I don't fully understand why, but then there's a couple other things in the budget that concerned me. And I'll just run through a list of things. The police department, our police officers, we're going to hold 2 off until August of 2020 in hiring to save $106,000. 2 fewer community service officers. When I read through it, it looked like we're underfunding officer training, uniform, safety equipment, and the outfitting of the squads. Fire department, we're not funding 3 firefighters, and there's no vehicle replacement for the fire department included. Department of Public Works, this one shocked me. No capital funding for the Department of Public Works. In years past, it averages about $500,000. 4 positions that we have in here are going to be unfunded. And then the communications budget looks like it goes bankrupt in 2021. Based on how the fund is constantly going down, which means it's going to be something, if we don't take care of, it's going to have to be wrapped into the general fund in the future. Other concerns I see, we have digital mobile technology expansion. I don't know what that means. I saw that each mobile device for the elder persons is $19 a month to run. Some of the other departments are running up to $40 a month. So I'd be curious, I don't know, Tony, if you have any idea of what that means? Yeah, if you could, if that's all right with the chair.
Sure.
Yep. It's his committee. I just ask a lot of questions.
Sure.
Yeah.
Tony Workacheski, Director of the IT Department. Traditionally, most of the investments in the budget for IT equipment has been in the form of desktop computers. And we've had a 5-year replacement cycle. In recent years, we've been trying to shift our focus away from less desktops because more of the jobs are becoming mobile in the community. And so we've been shifting to use that money to buy more mobile devices instead of desktops. And so between Public Works, who's getting a software package called AssetWorks, in which many more members of the Public Works Department will be taking iPads out in the field and recording their work there instead of on paper. Similarly, in the engineering department, when engineers are on a job site doing inspections of their work, it's much more efficient for them to do that on a mobile device. All those mobile devices need data connectivity to the internet. Thus, you get into data plans with Verizon, and that's kind of where the costs come in. So it is highlighted as a bit of an extra expense, but it's kind of coming at the cost of less money for the desktop PCs and shifting those monies into the more mobile
So it's
devices.
trading costs.
More or less.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
No residential revaluation, if I understand correctly, is included in the budget. We didn't have the funds for it. And it looks like there's gonna be a heavy dependence on debt next year and into the future. Any capital expenses for DPW, I can't imagine there'd be zero capital expense for DPW in 2020, which means there's gonna have to be some bonding for that. Plus the street lighting, plus discussions of a city hall, possible DPW. I don't know if we can afford all this. Then it said no funding for a structural deficit action team, but I thought that was one of the greatest ideas the mayor had in here. I'd like to see that go forward.
Mr. Chair.
Sure, please.
It's mainly a committee to discuss the ideas and make recommendations to the council, so committee doesn't necessarily cost any
Okay.
money.
So it
The
can still
ideas
possibly
that
go
might
forward.
go forward could cost some money in the short term, but the idea would be to save money in the long term, so I don't know exactly what the ideas would be. I have 5 pages of them so far, but we'll see. So the actual committee would not cost, maybe some water for the committee members. I don't know. I can bring that.
I guess how did we get to this point?
I think we tried to explain how things went from last year to this year. Each year we had some type of very large cost-saving event, and we just didn't have anything this year. That combined with increases for as part of for employees represented and non-represented, it all just came together this year.
Sort of a wake-up call.
Yes.
In short. Some ideas to save money too, but I'd be curious to see what other issues. So suck all the air out of them.
Sure. Alderman Weigel.
Just a point of clarification on those unfunded positions. Those are positions that have all been previously left open anyways? Is that, or we're not laying anybody off specifically. These were just positions that nobody's in them right now.
Correct. We try to minimize the impact on any existing employees, so there's no, aside from one error that I made with a neighborhood specialist, I forget what her title is, where she went
That's
from
a
.75,
part-time,
yeah,
yeah.
to a .50. The rest of those are vacant. Some of them have been vacant longer than others. Peggy just gave me the sheet last year at this time. For the 2019 budget, we had 53 vacant positions. This year, we have 36 going in. So that's another reason why everything is tighter. I believe there's 14 positions, 16 where hiring is in progress, and then we have 15 that are held to see where things are gonna be. So, for example, you mentioned the police positions, I believe there's been 3 vacant for a few months. And last year in the budget, we had actually taken out, was it 100,000 out of the patrol budget? We shorted that budget. We just probably called it out a little differently this year than we did that for police, fire, and the library, I believe, last year, to meet the expenditure restraint.
Yep, that would.
Probably more than,
And then, please, the revaluation question. How does a residential reevaluation affect what we get under the expenditure restraint program? No effect whatsoever.
No impact.
It's just a matter of how we spread the money around. Spread the taxes around. It's not like we revalue, and oh, suddenly the valuations come in significantly higher. That doesn't raise our levy limit.
It does not raise our levy limit or expenditure restraint.
Okay.
Those are money. You can spend X more than your budget this year, or you can raise X more than your
The only
levy.
thing that does go up under that is new development. Changes that?
Correct, under the levy limit.
Under the levy.
Mr. Chair. Just a little bit more on the reval. The $170,000 is an estimate based on the money we spent with the commercial reval per month, $28,000. And this is just the first part of it. It likely would take 3 or 3.5 years, so possibly more than $1 million to actually complete the whole revaluation. Jason sent, on Friday, he sent the numbers regarding the residential properties. I believe we're at 92.13%, and we have to be between 90 and 110. So we're still within that amount.
And this would be something that we're just delaying. Essentially, we're gonna have to do it sometime.
If we go below 90, we will have to do it. So sometimes it's better to do it when you're choosing to do it versus when someone's telling you to do it.
Sure. Alderman Chakowski.
I have a lot of the same concerns that Alderman May has, but one of the things that I saw that we had, the mayor's office, administration, IT, clerk's office, promotion and celebrations, police, fire, development, bins, were all over their budget last year's budget. And then I'm looking at items that they've budgeted in here for this year, is below what they budgeted in the years past. So what I'm seeing here is that it looks like, are people making things below budget, and they're gonna come back somewhere during the year and ask for more money, or just go over budget like in here? I mean,
Are you
there's-
speaking to the individual accounts or the bottom line of their budget? Because we've been getting stricter on where people are actually.
Individual account,
Okay.
just by going through, many things, like the, fire department's overtime. They have, budgeted 300,000, well, we got stats back to 17, they've never even been close to being near 300,000, or matter of fact, they're all over 400,000. So are they gonna be able to keep, stay in there? And the, chief said was, the main reason was, the amount of people that they have to have there every day.
The
Which I
minimum
think is something
staffing.
needs to look into. Having concerns about the public works, not having, where they consistently have been spending about $500,000, and now there's nothing. Where's that going? I know that, in this for carryovers, which I don't know if that's a good way of budgeting, depending on our carryovers to pay for various items. But, it is in the carryovers, if the carryovers are there. All these things are if. Question for Peggy on this, with the police now not hiring until August, did we figure all those months of health insurance coming in?
We did
Payments?
not.
You didn't do that here, so. okay, but I mean,
Yeah, we
talked
pulled-
about
yeah, we
trouble
pulled
we
those
ran
out.
into before, and so.
That's one of the items listed,
Pardon me?
I believe that's one of the items listed to put back in.
Oh, it's a number one item on there, which is, I think it has to be. I don't think it's a question. But it's like, if the money, all these go down as far as there's money in the carryovers. You know, and then, I just, in looking at all little details and things, you know, it's just, there's just so many things in here that are, either I don't understand, or, you didn't spend all your money in training and travel, but yet you're asking for more money, you know, for the training and travel in certain ones. And why is it? Why don't you just utilize what you have, instead of asking for more? I think we need to find some money to get those police officers hired earlier, or get more money to Public Works. Because I think there's a lot of spots here that are gonna be hurting this year. So somewhere along the line, it's gonna come back and kick us. And I don't think anybody can deny that we're kinda hanging out there. And the other thing question, the number 2 thing that we have to is fire department debt payment. What is that from?
So that one is something we actually wanted to pay in 2018, and unfortunately, fire was over by like 102,000, and we couldn't do it, and we had to carry it to this year, hoping that we have carryover for it. So that was a payment that was budgeted in the fire department because of some recently purchased equipment, and we were not able to do it in 18, so we pushed it to 19. But I do want to mention one other thing about this. There's a number of things that we can't add to next year's, like carryover funds can't be used for 2020 budget items because that would go over expenditure restraint. So that's a hard number. That's not, there's no options on that. You can have all the money you want in the world, but expenditure restraint program is what's your expenditure growth. And if your expenditure growth is higher than, in this case, 2.3% or 1.455 million, we will lose that 1.5 million. So any carryover funds should really just be used for one-time, perhaps capital expenditures, or yet in 2019.
So we could use it for the Public Works?
Capital
Is
equipment,
that-
yes.
as long as it's new equipment?
Anyone else? Good for the audience too.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah, Alderman May.
I have some things that I'd like to possibly discuss as possible cuts or measures in here. And I'm gonna start right away with the elder persons. I've got a ordinance on tonight to revise the health and dental. It won't impact any of the existing elder people who take the insurance, but anyone in the future would not be eligible for health and dental premium share costs. That would save us about $17,100. Our conferences and seminars budget for some reason is up $3,400. I would suggest we cut that back to the 2019 numbers. I'm just gonna make a list and send it out to you. National League of Cities, we have a National League of Cities membership, but I can't think of anything we have gotten for it as older people, other than an email maybe once a month, say, you know, with some information. That's another $3,400. My understanding is the Public Works Committee, each member of that committee has a American Public Works Association membership. If we cut out 5 of those, that'd save us another $975. Some other things that I noticed in that possibly would help save some money is the fire department. $6,000 that was budgeted in here was already spent with 2019 dollars, so that'd be a $6,000 difference there. I've got a fire department false alarm fee on there tonight that the fire department estimates will bring in approximately $36,000 in revenue. Hopefully that would help. I wonder if we should eliminate our Aurora Hospital donation. That was something new that we started probably 3 or 4 years ago, but before that we never made contributions to Aurora. That would be a possible cut there. Our expenditure restraint limit, I believe, is actually about $55,000 more than
Correct.
if you subtract, but you'd have to take out the revenue for the $36,000 from the fire department. So basically, we could add another $19,000 to capacity beyond the $36,000, right?
You could add 55,000 in expenditures.
Total expense, okay.
And
so
then to
whether
not
it
make the
comes from the
tax
false
rate
alarm fee or
change,
comes from
right.
some- Yeah,
To not make the tax rate change, then you would want additional revenues to match that.
okay. The poll worker scheduling software, $10,260, and Steve, thanks for sending me an email today. Why couldn't we have a member of the clerk's office help do all the scheduling and calling people for the
We
next year?
certainly can. One of the things is, I believe this takes up a significant amount of time for existing staff members. Some of the options for the future might be looking at moving around staffing or reallocating or doing some things with staffing. So in the past few years, we've been getting technology in place to make sure that we can utilize that instead of rehiring people for those things. So that would be one of the things that's why we have that in there.
The neighborhood specialist position in years past was 0.5 FTE. It was paid 0.75 this last year.
Correct.
Maybe we should keep it at 0.5 again going forward. Depends if where people want to spend their money, right? I was wondering, police department asset forfeiture, could we use that to buy squads and things like that?
At times we can use it to buy squads, yes. We try to limit that to one-time purchases because we can't supplant anything that would have normally been budgeted for under the federal rules on that.
Okay. And then the solid waste fund, for DPW, could we use that to buy a new garbage truck?
I looked into that because that's one of the questions you had asked me, and I think that is not allowed because that is one of the restricted services that was put in place by the legislature in 2012. So I don't think we're going to be able to do that because we wouldn't get a benefit from it. It's something we normally pay for in our budget. If we subtract it from our budget, we also have to subtract it from our levy.
Okay. So in the end, it doesn't
help us.
do anything?
Correct.
So the solid waste fund is just gonna keep growing by $500,000 a year, but you can't use it to spend on, capital like that?
Recycling, I think we use it for tipping fees, recycling, staff, and recycling vehicles.
wow. If we have to make one-time garbage cart purchases for everyone in the city? Could use it for that, maybe?
It's actually spending out of our budget right now, so that would
Can't do
again be
anything.
one of the restricted services.
Okay. Bins, and Ed, I had asked you this before as well. With the vehicles that you have, you still have $3,500 budgeted for mileage. Should we stop using vehicles or cut the mileage? You don't have to answer that right now. Other things, in the future, we're gonna wanna looking at possibly selling the senior center and using Village Manor Park or the library. That's $250,000 in our budget. There's a lot in here. And funding those police officers I'd like to do in January. So these are just some possible ideas I'm gonna throw out there, and maybe I'll put them in a list and send them out to everyone.
Could I just make one comment on?
Sure.
So I think we need to be really careful with all those positions that are on hold right now and adding them back. I'm not saying they're not needed.
Which-
However,
the police?
police, fire, public works, any of them. You have to remember, we got to expenditure restraint max this year by having, I think it was 14 positions on hold. So if we put them back in, what we will do is put us more behind the 8 ball when it comes to balancing for expenditure restraint. We don't have anything different as far as police raises go next year. We're still looking at 3%. And fire, we're looking at least 2%. And those two things alone are very close to hitting our expenditure restraint max. So I guess my recommendation from a financial perspective would be hold off on adding those back until we get the structural deficit team in place and we start figuring out ways that we're gonna change services. Because if we don't change services between now and next budget, it'll make this budget look like no problem at all. So we really need to start focusing on changing the way we're doing service delivery in order to make another budget. And if tomorrow wasn't gonna come, I wouldn't worry about it. I'd say, yeah, find the money and do it. But right now, what we have to remember is those all pile on top of each other, and they increase when we have a 3% pay increase. So just something to keep in mind as we're going through that process.
And how long is that police contract open till?
This is year 2, I believe, so
Is it 2-year or 3-year cycles?
it's a
I
3.
believe it runs through 2021, doesn't it?
21. Yeah.
Okay, so it's a 3-year.
So this is only year 1, yes. But that's a big chunk of money that we just have to really be cognizant of.
This is tough, I mean, hand it to you, it's a tough budget.
Alderman Chabusky.
You know, you may be looking at these things saying, oh, it's only $1,000 here, it's only, you know, $2,000 there and everything, but it adds up, and because of the way the budget is, we're gonna be needing that money, or we should be using that money now, maybe towards other things, which is gonna run into other problems, but, I think that we need, everything that he mentioned, we need to look at that, do we need to do that? You know, do we?
For sure, and I hope you didn't
Right.
get that from what I said. I just
No, I
said,
said
be careful about adding things
Right.
back that we're
I
not getting rid of
understand that,
things,
I'm
but
saying-
certainly.
I'm just saying that, you know, people look at that, well, you're only saving 1,000 here, 1,000 there. We start adding that up, that will add up, and everything is so tight. I think that we need every $1,000, every $900. I mean, there's a lot of things that people wanted that they're not in there. And if we go into, our overtime in some of these departments start going crazy, where are we coming up with the money for that? And so I think that we shouldn't just, you know, blow off what Mike's saying here. We should look at every single savings that we can get in here. We should go through the budget, everybody should go through the budget, find every savings they can, without hurting, you know, everybody's particular budget, so. Not saying that the mayor hasn't gone through it close enough, but.
Mayor Devine.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've heard the timing of the hiring of the police department staff mentioned a couple times, and couldn't help but notice the deputy chief is sitting behind me. I don't know how many of you have asked him, but I did talk to the chief about this, and he was very confident that he could work with this hiring timeline. It was not gonna impact the coverage of patrols in the city. I don't know if you can speak for him or.
Yeah. So when we found out that that the city was in overall not the greatest budget shape, and Rebecca asked the department heads to look at stuff, we looked at what we could do internally to try to come up with our, some cuts in our budget. And working with Rebecca, this was something that wasn't her suggestion, it was something that we decided as a management team of the police department. On any given year, I think since I've been in a command staff position for almost 10 years now, we've always had at least 2, 3, sometimes we've even run more openings during a year. And it's something that we felt that we could hold off to making those hirings until August or so, and that the person on the street's not gonna notice a difference in the service that they're gonna see from our officers. There's not gonna be any changes in response times or anything like that, so it was something that we felt that we could do to give back, and we were comfortable with holding off on those particular hirings until that point.
And I think Rebecca had said earlier, we're currently down 3.
Correct.
Right now, so it's, and as, I'm sure you've all seen the trends from the partnership meetings, I mean, the numbers are going in the right direction this year in a lot of the categories with our current staffing levels, so I think, it's something that's very much on my radar. I wouldn't do anything, you know, I wouldn't propose things in this realm if I thought it was gonna impact public safety.
So I just have one more piece of feedback on that. So when we talk about the staffing levels, that all makes sense, but what we have to remember is prior to 2 years ago, a lot of our departmental budgets weren't over budget regularly. And now that's becoming more of a thing. So we really have to be careful. Again, one of my biggest concerns is, yes, there's a lot of cuts in there, and yes, everybody's agreed to them, but we really have to make sure we live within them, because next year, there's no limit. We don't, if police overtime needs to go over more, we don't have an option to do that without cutting something else out of the budget. So the recent trend the last couple of years, when we have had a number of budgets going over their budget allotment, it becomes tighter and tighter. And if we get to a point where all these positions are filled and overall as a city we're over budget, yes, we have fund balance, but we don't have expenditure restraint capacity. So that $1.5 million is still at risk.
Alderman May.
And I did talk to the chief as well about this. He said, yeah, I wouldn't want to make it a long-term thing, but thanks for the year, we could make it work. And I don't think you're putting the city's safety at harm by not having it there. That being said, I find it troubling the amount of incidents that we're seeing, more so in my own district, where I think if we had some more police out on patrol, it might help. Just having them driving through neighborhoods and watching things. We had the Amazon delivery driver. We had Officer Kendall injured off 92nd Street. We had a drug incident on 87th and Maple. Just a lot of things going on, and I know the police department you're working hard, and I don't think there's anything malicious being done here in the budget. I think a budget document says a lot about our priorities, and I'm just really concerned about having those patrol officers and the safety in our community. So I do think the police are doing a good job overall, though. I mean, the T-Mobile thing that recently came up, and Wonky's been trying to chase the guy through 3 incidents, and West Allis caught him when it happened here. So, yeah, I don't think there's any malicious intent or anything on behalf of the mayor's proposed budget. I think the police department can live with it, but I'd like to see more patrols, and I think this might afford it by having these positions in place earlier.
Mr. Chair.
Yes,
I just wanted to follow up on Alderman Pletsky's statement about every little bit adds up, and I think all of you got the packet that had the additional budget information, and on pages 4, 5, and 6, you will see how every little bit adds up. There's 3 pages of things that we went through the whole budget with all of the departments. Some of them are $500, some of them are $50,000, so we did a lot of work in going through each and every line item and adding that up, and then we got to the budget gap of the almost $3.5 million. So it does add up quite quickly, so I just wanted to make that comment.
All right, anything further before we move on to the next item on the agenda? Yes.
Are we gonna do amendments in between? Are we gonna, for staff, we would need to know so we can calculate things and put things together. We don't have enough staff here to have like 10 people in the back taking the expenditures and the revenues. So I know you're not making any decisions, but we would need to know at some point, what amendments would be made. I don't know if that's something that,
Just want to know the ones that are possible, or?
yeah, I had talked to the chair about possibly having a meeting after the public hearing next week. That would be a time where you maybe discuss, but the following week is budget adoption. So, usually you would probably want to have a heads up as committee members and council members when you're gonna vote on them. So I guess I'm just looking for some feedback into what you want us to put together as part of a decision package for you for next week. I have your list here. I don't know if there's any other items that anyone has that we can do that. I don't.
Yeah, Alderman May, would you be comfortable with staff putting together, the one big amendment and
Yeah,
can
we
discuss
can always
it
just cross
on-
out what we
line
want as a
item.
committee.
on the line item it? Okay. And
It
we
doesn't
can-
make sense to do one at a time, that's.
No, right, and we can meet on Tuesday after our budget public hearing and specifically address those.
Mhm.
You say Tuesday recess?
Tuesday, next week
Oh, next
after our
week,
public
okay.
hearings,
Oh,
So, Mr. Chair,
so we'd have an additional meeting of the ANF committee.
it sounds like from staff, getting those 2 police officers earlier, as much as I'd like to do it, might be harmful to future budgets.
Well, just think it's not in there now, so if 2 police officers get added, let's just say you move them to January, and that's 2 more 100,000. So not only do we have to have the 200,000, but we have to have the 3% on the 200,000, that would be part of our 1.4. So now our expenditure restraint, if it's the same next year as it is now we only have 1.2 to work with, instead of 1.4. So
Is anyone retiring this year in the police department?
can't really ask that, so let's not go there.
Oh, man. I mean, I think we'd want to have an idea then where people would want that to go. Would it just be a cut off the top, or we, people want it to go to DPW capital? Do we want to? Yeah, I don't know. No.
Alderman Chablisky.
Did you come up with a total? Did you add up how much would be saved at all, or? I don't know.
Well, I've got quite a bit here. I don't know.
Oh, you didn't add it
It's
up.
well over 100,000 if I got everything, but I don't know if everyone's
Well,
going
do
to
we have
support
to put
everything.
it, do we have to put it anywhere? Can we just leave it in the general fund for if we need something, because,
I have another recommendation.
Yes, go ahead, Peggy.
We don't have really a lot in the general fund for contingency of break-fix things, so that would be super important to me to get something in there, because again, if we have a chiller that breaks and we need to pay $10,000, it's either gonna be cut something else or don't fix it next year.
I think that's a good thing, to do, simply because,
And it would also give council flexibility, if you decided you wanted to use that contingency for something next year, you already have it into the budget, you would just need to identify specifically what you wanna use it for. So you could certainly do that.
All right,
Mr. Chair,
Alderman Weigel.
one quick question. On this page 7 of this most recent thing, you have a list of items to prioritize. Do you want us to prioritize this? I mean, this is this isn't, most important, least important in this list, is it? It is. So it is, so that health insurance contribution for vacancies, that's our number 1 priority, you're feeling?
So the way that works, if I could just tell you about it a little bit, we budget in our health insurance fund, and I think this is what Alderman Shpelski was referring to before. We budget in our health insurance fund for so many positions in the general fund, and then that flows through the payroll account, the benefit accounts, into the health insurance fund. Well, when we have all those vacancies, those health insurance premiums from the city don't go into the health insurance fund. So our health insurance fund has been shorted. So what this would do is this would kind of cover for the 2019 vacancies, if you will, throughout the year that we didn't make those contributions. It will be a problem in future years too, but I would say it's probably not the highest priority as far as things getting done. I mean, the health insurance fund is very important, and we certainly don't want to rob that, but when it comes to providing a service or not, I would say this would be something that we should try to use carryover funds for, rather than budgeted dollars.
Oh, I see. This is for
Yes, so this is
carryover.
all three. So we could go through and identify which,
What would be best to be used from the additional capacity point of view?
Alderman Chablisky.
but this only goes as far as how much money we have. We don't know how much money we're gonna have yet, so we don't know where the line is gonna be put through here.
Right, I understand that.
Yeah.
Somewhere as you go
The
down.
first 2 lines.
Hopefully down here, but,
Yeah, hopefully get down.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's, I mean, the first 2 lines are $425,000.
All right, anything else on the budget before we move on to the capital improvement program? All right, then moving on to item 3 on our agenda, the 2020-2024 capital improvement program. Peggy, I think this one's for you. If you like.
doesn't
Rebecca?
matter, Rebecca can start. Sure.
Okay.
You have the final draft before you that the committee put together. There are, I think the biggest thing of note is there are several items that the committee has recommended that the council look towards bonding for, which we previously did not do bonding. You will find them on very small page number 6. Oh, actually 5 and 6. Yes. So, you see the gray column on the right side, that's the recommendation for other bonding. It starts with Emerald Ash Borer, then Boulevard Landscape, playground improvements, repairs from the playground inspection, $150,000 for Fire Station 3 HVAC, Health Department facility maintenance, library facility maintenance or improvements. The walls are somewhat coming down there that we need to look at. So that's page 5, and then on page 6, there is, this is where you get more into the equipment for public works, so the concrete saw, and then the police department electronic parking citations. This goes along with, kind of what I discussed with the poll worker scheduling software. Then there's a security camera replacement, Office 365 expansion, electronic poll books. So the recommendation of the capital improvement committee was to fund those with other bonding. We started the 2020 capital with what, $37 million in requests. A lot of it was delayed for future years or prioritized out of the capital. Don't know if you want to go through line by line. There's the streets. It's set up the way that it has been every year. So you have the streets and then street related, then things related to the stormwater, water utilities. Sidewalk, park improvements. There's a lot of public property improvements that we have on hold for the subcommittee and for decisions regarding the public works facility, city hall, and things like that. And the street lighting, which, yes, that could be anywhere between 1.2 and 1.8 million, depending upon whether we use internal or external staff. So, I don't know if anyone has any specific ideas. I think, this is the first time you're actually seeing the full plan in print. So I don't know if that would be better. If people want to send us questions in between now and next Tuesday, they have them, unless you can identify them.
Is there a number that we have to get down to?
Well, for the streets, there's we did recommend the increase, but it's still a matter of, do we have the staff to actually put together the work, and then the capacity for our bonding, and paying back the debt payments, that's the bigger challenge, because we have to fit that in our
Yeah, so
expenditures.
debt's free from expenditure restraint and levy limits. It's obviously needs to be paid back through the tax levy. So that's the real, it's gonna be the will to increase taxes to pay the new debt payments off.
We expect interest rates to stay about where they are. I guess no one has a crystal ball, but, right?
Depends if you think there's gonna be a
Maybe
recession
cut
next
down.
year.
Yeah.
Rumor has it there might be, that could help rates. Usually when,
Where are they gonna go, to zero?
I don't know if they can go much further.
Not that much.
They just went down another quarter.
we keep saying they can't go lower and they keep going lower, so there's projections out there that if there's another recession, we will see a little bit lower rates. Of course, the spreads are getting tighter and tighter, but they're sitting at a good place right now. We're gonna be talking about the borrowing a little bit later, and the rates we're expecting are pretty decent right now, so better than they have been all year.
And a recession would help with costs too, 'cause construction costs might stay. I won't say
Usually it
they'll go
helps with
down.
labor, usually it helps with a lot of things in our sector.
Mr. Chair?
Alderman May.
With the 1.8 for the low-pressure sodium bulb replacements, I think we really gotta get moving on that if we're gonna keep up. Well, we're already behind, you know, keep up with the
We're actually
projection
not
of going
behind.
dark.
We're actually not behind. We got a lot done this year, 212? We have 212 of them done this year, and the study was not expecting any to be done, so we're
So it
doing a
buys us
good
1 year?
job.
All right.
Yeah.
We'll take the 1 year.
And we got it done at a very low cost, so.
Has there been any discussion with the capital improvement committee about doing any sort of lighting utility?
There has not, but that's kind of something I've been putting together. I mean, even, we talk about, are we gonna do this internally, or are we gonna do this with a contractor? I know they're gonna be talking about it at Public Works tonight, and did everybody get copies of that on the council? So everybody has copies of what all the bids came in for all the street contracts, as well as the F1 the one circuit contract. And today we were able to pull all the rest of the costs together for how much it costs to do F1 internally. So my concern in the past was I don't want to borrow for labor. So again, to your question about the street lighting utility, all that work we did last year really could perhaps come in handy on that, because that could be something we could do while we're doing this conversion project, and it would be something that could end at the end of, the 13 years for the high voltage, low sodium, and then go on to the high voltage, high sodium, and you could use it from that perspective. So I do think that would probably be the best decision if we were gonna go about that, is to do some kind of a utility, just so we don't have to borrow yet more money on top of what's being recommended here.
So the projects for this year that are already kind of, you're already moving forward to 1.8 isn't needed for any of those?
The ones for 2019?
2020.
2020 are not included yet. So the numbers I heard from Engineering and Public Works today were about 800,000 if we did it internally. Is that
Your
true?
numbers were even lower.
Right, I mean, our actual numbers were lower, but the estimates that we were talking about were 800 if we did it internally, perhaps 2 to 2+ times more if we do it with a contractor. Of course, we have to have the staffing to do that and the capacity for them to do that and not have them doing other things.
I imagine with the year starting in January and then construction season starting around Easter, so April 1st, let's say, that we would need a decision, and moving forward by April 1st, you're gonna need a decision quickly.
Well, at the next council meeting, I'm gonna have a proposal from the consultant to start designing it.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, we're gonna start designing it so that we'll have something to bid or do internally by April.
Okay.
So the
So
decision doesn't have to happen at the next one? You just have to decide that you want to get it designed and have the
Yeah.
plans ready. The decision would have to come in the coming months then.
And then would the mayor's deficit action team be in charge of figuring that out, or who's figuring out what to do with the utility? I mean, I imagine you want some direction from council. Public Works Committee making that decision, or
That would be up
Yeah.
to the
I
council.
think it's up to us.
A&F or Public Works?
Probably both.
Could be joint.
Yeah.
Yeah, yes.
Should be.
Yes.
If we're gonna create a new utility, I think everybody should have a voice, that's right.
Okay.
Mr. Chair,
Alderman Vitale.
the discussions about the fact of hiring a contractor to do the lighting throughout the city, by hiring, say, a private contractor, to me, it's goes absurd really, because it's not a project that will be lasting only a year. We're talking about maybe it will take about 10 years to do all this work. So the fact is, I mean, I felt from the beginning, I think we should do that in housing, that's to me would be more cost effective, and we have control more who's doing the work, within our staff and within Public Works. To me, that's the only easy way. I think it's, like I hear, it's more cheaper to do that in-house. So that's one thing I feel about it. And then I'd like to mention the fact of, I did praise the last meeting that we had with the capital improvement programs, that Chief Puller, I mean, I had to praise him because he initially proposed to purchase a fire engine, which was over $670,000. And then all of a sudden, he astonished me, you know, he says, well, not right now, he says, I changed my mind, I put it on hold. So I praised him, actually, I clapped my hands on him.
My pleasure.
It's right there. That's all I have.
All right, is there any further discussion on our capital improvement program? All right, so I think we know where we're going, we just need to do some more work and get something together. All right. And then item 4 is a communication from the city administrator regarding the general guidelines and framework for administering the pilot program for utilizing retirees for provisional and fill-in work in public works and providing incentives. Ms. Brill.
It's actually a communication from myself and Dave Webking, the Director of Public Works. We had talked about this a few weeks ago at one of the Administration and Finance Committee meetings, and we put together a document which outlines the program. We're trying to have qualified personnel supplement our existing staff with snow events and other provisional work that we needed. So the guidelines are outlined here. We didn't lay out each specific step, but the high level things are listed because it is a pilot program, so we might need to make some adjustments to how we're implementing it as it goes along. So we're recommending that it go on throughout the year 2020, that the duties would include preparation of streets for weather event, plowing streets, salting, other storm cleanup, and spring and fall mowing for the retirees. The limitation, they wouldn't work more than 39 hours a week. If they work more than that, we would be subject to overtime. Not more than 560 hours per year, and they would not be eligible for benefits. In addition, the qualifications would be that they have to have a CDL, they're 18, they have experience driving plows, and for the retirees that they have been retired for at least 3 months from the Department of Public Works, and they retired in good standing. The compensation, we have it outlined at $21.15 per hour for snow events, which is the first step for truck drivers, and then other work would be equivalent to the lowest step of the job they would be performing. In addition to the compensation, they would also be eligible for a quarterly $500 reduction for their required premium share for the health care. And in order to get that, they have to work a minimum of 144 hours per quarter, which equals about 3 12-hour shifts per month or 6 8-hour shifts per month. And then if someone works 288 in one quarter, they would get 6 months of the credit. There's some examples listed here. If this is successful, we would probably want to expand it to other departments and other duties. We thought it would be good to start it with Public Works, especially with the snow season. We didn't anticipate it was gonna come last week, but we'll hopefully be ready for the 2020 event. So I don't know if anyone has any additional questions or comments.
And I'll just, before we go, I'm gonna start talking first. And it just says, it seems like a great idea to me, and the important thing being that it's a pilot program. If we don't like it, we can discontinue it. If we do like it, we can continue it. That's great. And Alderman Chableski.
Yeah, did you say that they're gonna be eligible for health insurance?
These would be retirees that are currently on our health insurance
okay,
plan.
okay.
So they would get this credit. So it's beneficial to us. We get qualified people, and then they, in addition to compensation, they get some credit, which you said it was equivalent to like $3 an hour.
$3.47 per hour is basically
So-
the premium that we'd be paying. And then we don't have WRS to pay and health insurance to pay and those kind of things. So it's a pretty minimal trade-off for that.
Okay. Besides that, I think it's a good idea.
Great.
We're gonna have retiree alderman coming back?
I would drive a snowplow.
They have a CDL, right?
I'd go along.
All right, do you need any action from our committee? Do we get to take a vote on this?
I think just a consensus that we should
Consensus is
go
good.
forward
Move
with.
forward.
Okay, very good, you got it. All right,
Thank you.
then is there anything else to properly come before the committee? Have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
In a second? I second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned. Thanks.
No, I meant come back as